This is a case about the most powerful man in the room. A man described as a man after God's own heart. A king, a warrior, a poet, who saw something he wanted and used every instrument of his power to take it, including murder. The victim was innocent. The killer never stood trial, and the cover-up was almost perfect.
Before we examine the crime, we need to establish who David was. Because this case only makes sense when you understand the height from which he fell. David was not born into power. He was the youngest of 8 sons, a shepherd boy, overlooked by his own father when the prophet Samuel came looking for Israel's next king. And yet, God chose him. He killed Goliath as a teenager, survived years of being hunted by the previous king, built an empire, wrote poetry that is still read 3,000 years later. By the time this case begins, David is at the absolute peak of his power. He is beloved. He is celebrated. He is, by every account, exceptional. Which is exactly why what he did next is so devastating.
It was spring, the time when kings go to war. But David stayed home. He sent his army, commanded by Joab, to besiege the Ammonite city of Rabbah. And David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David rose from his bed and walked on the roof of the palace. And from the roof, he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. David sent someone to find out who she was. The answer came back, "This is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite." 3 pieces of information. She has a family. She has a husband. She has a husband who is currently serving in David's army. David sent for her anyway.
Bathsheba returned to her house, and some time later, she sent word to David. 2 words that changed everything. "I am pregnant." David now had a problem. Bathsheba was married. Her husband Uriah was a soldier in David's army, currently at war. If Bathsheba's pregnancy became known, the law was clear. Adultery was punishable by death. Her death. David needed a solution, and the solution he reached for first was not murder. It was misdirection. He sent for Uriah, brought him home from the battlefield, and told him to go home to his wife. The plan: Uriah goes home, sleeps with his wife, the pregnancy gets attributed to him. Problem solved. Except, Uriah didn't go home. He slept at the entrance of the palace, with the servants. When David asked him why, Uriah said, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents. My commander Joab and my lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and sleep with my wife? I will not do such a thing." The most honorable man in this story was the one David was trying to use.
David tried one more time. He invited Uriah to dinner, got him drunk, and sent him home. Uriah still didn't go. He slept at the palace entrance again, and that was when David made the decision. He wrote a letter to Joab, his military commander. The letter said, "Put Uriah out in front, where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him, so that he may be struck down and die." David wrote the order, sealed it, and gave it to Uriah to carry. He sent the man to his own death, carrying the letter that ordered it in his own hands.
Joab followed the order. He positioned Uriah at the front, where the fighting was fiercest, and when the battle reached its peak, the men around Uriah pulled back and left him. Uriah the Hittite died in front of the city walls of Rabbah, surrounded by the enemy, alone. Joab sent a messenger back to David with the battle report. He included a line as if it were just another casualty. Uriah the Hittite is also dead. David's response? The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and overthrow it. Do not let this thing displease you. Tell Joab not to be upset. These things happen in war. That was the official response of a man who had just committed premeditated murder, using the machinery of his own army.
Bathsheba mourned her husband. The Bible records it. When the mourning was over, David sent for her, and she became his wife and bore him a son. On the surface, a tragedy with a resolution, a widow taken in by the king, a child given a home. The cover was clean. Almost. But the Bible records one more line. Just one. After everything, the seduction, the pregnancy, the manipulation, the murder, the cover-up, the marriage, one line. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. 8 words, and everything unravels from there.
God sent a prophet named Nathan to David. Nathan didn't accuse David directly. He told him a story. A rich man, a poor man, one little lamb. The poor man had nothing except one small lamb that he raised like a daughter. The rich man had everything. But when a traveler came, instead of taking from his own flocks, the rich man took the poor man's only lamb. David's response was fury. He said, "The man who did this deserves to die." And Nathan looked at him and said, "You are the man." 3 words. David had just condemned himself out of his own mouth. Nathan delivered the verdict. The child born from this would die. The sword would never depart from David's house. David confessed. And unlike what happened with Cain, David was not protected. He lived, but he never stopped paying for what he did. For the rest of his life, the sword did not depart from his house. His children, his kingdom, his legacy, all of it, marked by what happened on that rooftop, on a spring evening, when a king should have been at war.
The case of David and Uriah raises questions that courts still wrestle with. What do you do when the most powerful person in the room commits the crime? When the investigation has to go through the same system the criminal controls? David was never tried, never imprisoned. He remained king. But the verdict found him anyway, through his children, through his kingdom, through everything he built, slowly coming apart. Justice doesn't always look like a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like consequences, arriving late, but arriving. Next case, Judges 19, the most disturbing crime scene in the Bible. A story so brutal, the man who recorded it stopped and asked his readers, "Have you ever seen anything like this?" Subscribe. The case files are open.